This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
Welcome to the February 4th Board of Finance Workshop. This morning we have IT, Public Works, and the Board of Ed. Because our January meeting was canceled, I believe Public Works was scheduled for the January meeting, so they will be presenting this morning. We are going to start with IT. I would ask, although most of us know each other, if the presenters could just introduce themselves, first name and last name. We do have a new board member. We are on TV, so I think it would be helpful. The only other thing I would say is that we have a little bit longer agenda today because we did miss the January meeting. While I don't want to suppress any questions, if as we go through the budget there are some smaller numbers, $500 numbers, $1,000 numbers, let's just hit them quickly, please, and move on. If the members have a question, they can certainly ask about it. But let's try and hit the bigger numbers, please, and the capital expenditures. So with that.
Good morning. I'm Alex Linos. I'm the IT manager for the town, and I will be presenting the 2023-2024 budget.
Oh, hey, Alex, I'm sorry. I meant to interrupt.
Sorry.
Nancy and I were talking beforehand, so I apologize.
No worries.
There's been a little bit of a paperwork shuffle in previous years, because we get a document from the Board of Finance, from the Finance Department. We get them from so we just want to clarify before we start which document we're looking at, and so maybe Ingrid can help us with that. I do have, obviously, the one, as do the rest of the members, this one, okay? So this was the one we got. So was your presentation any different than what's in here? I know you have that capital item. I did see that, but
It shouldn't be. Although
It's
what's on the top is, wait till Ingrid tells us.
I'm sorry.
No, it shouldn't be any different than what's
Okay. All right. Please go ahead
on
then.
page 25.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the same, right?
Okay.
I have
Thank
both
you.
documents.
All right. Please go ahead then.
There's two page 25, so
Right,
Yeah.
we want to use
the front page of the
front
packet.
page. Okay. So if you'd like, I can start with either the capital or the routine.
Let's go. Yeah. Let's go with the operating expenses first.
Okay. For operating expenses, we are seeing a 5% increase in our maintenance contract line. That's to account for some subscription increases. And we're also going to see an over 100% increase in our Munis line, and that is to facilitate the addition of modules for Munis that we were not using, and that subsequently, through Ingrid going to Branford and seeing some of the things happening in Munis that we couldn't do here, I think we discovered some efficiencies that would help the town. You're going to see some quotes in my packet that are related to additional modules from Tyler Technologies, who creates Munis. Those additional modules are accounted for in this increase, which would be Tyler Content Management System and the Tyler ExecuTime system, which will help us track hours that are currently being manually calculated, and that would facilitate us using software to assist us in calculating those items. Is there any questions regarding those items?
No, you're going to hit your payroll, right?
Yeah. I don't necessarily hit it, but I don't get to set that, but finance does. It would be nice if I got to set it myself. So there's a payroll increase of 13%, and that's probably for contractual reasons.
What about the network administrator? It's like a 17% increase.
That is not a, so the network administrator position, I think if you looked at previous years, we're not using all of that line. And I think it was just increased per the contractual reasons.
Is that is that a full-time or part-time
It is
position?
a full-time position.
Yeah, I don't know how you get to 17%.
Yeah, I'm not following
I did
either.
the same
Yeah.
calculation, so.
Right.
That I don't know, because I don't actually increase any of the personnel lines myself.
So when you say we haven't used it in previous years, if we had a full-time person,
We
what-
we added a full-time person after my first year here, but we brought in not someone of, we didn't bring in like a full network engineer. We brought in a desktop support specialist slash entry-level network person. So we actually brought them in at a lower grade, which gives them opportunity to learn and go into a role like that.
Okay. So maybe, Ingrid, if you wouldn't mind checking, unless you know the answer.
Yeah, I think we have the answer. Do you have it?
No, I
Okay,
have
okay.
to check, yes.
All right, so I think it's a combination of contractual obligations, step incentives in the contract. And when we hired Joe, Alex, was this his first full year this past year, or is this his first full year this year?
It would be his I think it was his second. full
Okay.
year. Yeah.
So we'll look at, I'm sure the number's accurate, but that's what it's a combination of,
Yeah,
okay?
okay.
So-
But if there's a grade change, I think
Yeah.
that should also be reflected in the employment table. You
Well,
know,
the
if-
grade change would be a step level increase in the contract. But we'll check it out, okay?
Sure.
We'll check it out.
Okay. And that would be the routine line or the operating expenses. Again, if there's any questions there, I can certainly answer those.
Okay.
For our capital expenses, we're doing a second year lease of our data center equipment, which was refreshed from the previous capital. We were able to completely outfit our primary data center as well as our secondary data center at the police department, giving us the ability to handle a failover situation. We also added another year of desktop computer replacements, which are scheduled for this fiscal year.
Give me one second, I'm trying to find your IT budget. Oh, I found, here it is, yeah, page 38, I got it.
The 71,441, what is the breakdown of that?
61,441.25 is the lease year 2, and then the additional 10,000 is the desktop computer replacement schedule.
And Alex, when you say it's a lease of what, please?
Two, so it's a lease of 4 servers, 2 storage arrays, and a backup system, consisting of the town hall annex and the police department as a primary and secondary data center. We did a purchase lease through Dell on state contract.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? Any other questions from the board?
I think there was some mention about assisting the police department with their database in your,
We do, I mean, we
Packet.
do actually host all of the police services out of our data center. So in addition to any town services, it's a very unclear line of what town IT does, but we do take care of town hall, annex, police, fire, library, all those departments, as well as the town garage, senior center, and water treatment facility. All those fall under town IT.
I see. And so you're also helping the fire department with their new data system that they're,
Their new system, primarily on data export and conversion, but yeah, we've been involved in helping move them to their new software platform.
and they've been able to retain all the historical data for
Yes.
both police and fire.
And we would continue to, even though that software package is going away, we'll try and maintain it in a legacy fashion if they need access to it in the future.
And just for future reference, can both police and fire, at the flip of a toggle, look at data in fiscal year as well as calendar year, or is it limited in terms of the systems that these new systems?
It depends, because the systems are really geared towards their line of work. They're more report management systems than they are actually having anything to do with payroll or other than some scheduling management that happens in the fire department system. They really don't have any. They don't track financial pieces in that, as far as I know.
Right.
It's mostly report management, truck management, fleet management, things that are specific to theirs.
Yeah, I think they were trying to have some financial demonstration of cost under different scenarios.
I see.
And so it would be really helpful if we could, on this Board of Finance, have every single department on a fiscal year basis as opposed to some on a fiscal year and some on a calendar year. So I just wondered if we are pursuing brand new database systems, one would hope that it would have the flexibility to go back and forth between the two.
Yeah.
That's all.
All right, anything else from the members?
Well, just looking at his budget and what your department's responsibilities are, even though the bottom line increase here is listed at 15%, it's pretty much cut and dry. If we're talking contractual on the personnel line, and if we need and want all the features of the Muni system, that Muni increase alone, 40,000, is almost 8 or 9% of that 15% increase right there. So the fact that it's 15% is because your budget is so small to begin with. And yet your department is so critical to this town. So my question is, I see you as like our firewall, okay, as like our gatekeeper in town, because what's very important that from my point of view is that you're guarding the town against some other larger expense if something goes wrong. And so the question comes up, how did a town like Hamden that had an official or a department head like you, how did they end up in 2023 being vulnerable to a situation that I think might have cost them as much as $500,000?
And that's on the low side, probably for a ransom payment. And the cost of, well, it's not only the cost of the ransom payment and then the cost of all the downtime where their employees aren't actually able to do anything.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I know that no one is immune from this sort of exposure or possibility.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you have contingencies and plans in place in case something similar happens.
So we do have an incident response plan, and I am working in conjunction with finance on our cybersecurity insurance. We also benefit from what's not in here is some of the monies that are saved by using regional programs such as SCROG, who actually uses their funding to purchase our cybersecurity training platform, NovaFor. So that doesn't directly come out of this budget. We're leveraging the regional budget for that item, and there's more coming from SCROG. I'm also involved with DEMS Region 2, which is also receiving a lot of federal funding. So we're going to be able to draw upon that regional budget to get us additional cybersecurity programs that we can implement in town.
Okay, I mean, I know you have plenty of safeguards, you know, I'm not talking necessarily about encryption.
Right.
But you may have backups to the backup, because sometimes certain systems have to be insulated or
Yes.
off to the side.
Yes.
So that
Air
they
gapped.
themselves cannot be infiltrated.
Right.
Well, we have put a lot of trust in you, and but there are occasionally subcontractors who get victimized by this that affect the town, such as our data system for the clerk, the COT, I think it's COT.
Yes.
Yeah. So they recently had a situation where they went down for many days. So we had to pretty much go back to the date to paper.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is an item that's actually not hosted on site.
I know that's out of our control, but all I can say is thank you for what you do. What you do is critical, and I think you're worth every dollar that
Thank you.
we put in the budget.
So thanks for saying that, Michael. A couple things about Alex, folks, and those watching on TV. Alex is, for lack of a better way to describe it, is always roaming behind the scenes, watching for invasions. And he's very good at sending us, the employees, emails saying, be careful of this, do not do this, be careful of this email. He's very good at that. And I appreciate what he does, because when I deal with the rating agencies and I have to do a rating call, and I'm on the hot seat to answer questions to retain a AAA rating, one of the big things I have to talk about is cybersecurity. And he's done a great job at updating patches and systems, and we've not fallen into what other municipalities have fallen into in terms of attacks that have created a crippling environment in their municipal government. And lastly, I want to share with you this story. After the previous IT director retired, we went through a rigorous interview process, and with some top people. So we hired Alex, and one of the guys who didn't get the job was also very well regarded in his profession. He called me and asked me who got the job. So I mentioned, and I said, Alex Linos. The guy who called was disappointed he didn't get the job. As soon as I mentioned Alex's name, you hired Alex Linos, now I know why I didn't get the job. So that's a true testimony to him.
Well, and I can also attest at the most recent special Board of Selectmen meeting regarding the Housing Authority, I know that Alex was behind the scenes making sure that Attorney Coppola could actually log onto Zoom in order to host that meeting, and if we could not do it that evening, it would have been a real problem, because we had to have a certain number of days that the meeting was posted if it were rescheduled. So thank you, Alex, for talking her not only down off the ledge, but also through that process, and ultimately making that available to the public virtually. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks,
Alex,
Alex.
one final question. Do you happen to know if our insurance covers things like ransomware and security breaches?
It does. We have a risk, and I have to look back at the policy, but which is up again in July, so we're going to be looking for another policy.
Okay.
But we do have a ransomware
Okay.
cybersecurity policy.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
And should we expect that the munis charge will consistently be $80,000 going forward, or is this kind of a one-time blip that includes training? Because it's gone from 40 to 80, so it's a pretty big jump.
So there is a bit of a blip this time as we're bringing it up, because there are some onboarding fees to get us onto these new packages. I expect it will level out because we're going to be on a subscription model. So once we're past the implementation, I expect it to probably come down a bit.
Okay. Thank you, that's helpful.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
Ingrid, while we're changing departments here, just on page 46 of the, the main budget, the 5-year capital plan, just make a note to change Alex's CapEx to the figure he mentioned, which was at 71. It shows as 80 on that page. All right. See it there?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Mike? Mike? Yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
Michael, all right. Mike.
I know. Hold on.
Last night, I know about yes.
Okay, Andy, we're going to go with you first, I guess, okay? And Andy, you might have missed the very beginning of the meeting. Just please introduce yourself and any staff, just for the new members here, people in the audience and people on TV, please.
Okay, absolutely. Okay. Well, good morning, all. Thank you for having me. I'm Andy Bevilacqua. I'm the town engineer. I'm filling in for Lynn Sadowski. Lynn is actually away on vacation at this point, so she asked me to step in and kind of say a few things about the budget. I've got Ilio, our chief building official, here as well, who falls under Lynn's budget. So if you got any questions on the building side, he's certainly here to ask. So I was going to start with personnel changes. And the first item was the blight officer. Blight officer had been a part-time position. In March of 22, our blight officer retired. And
Excuse me.
Yeah, just the page in the department, yeah.
Which page are we?
Yeah,
oh, sorry.
well, it's engineering, right?
So, well, technically we are blight officer. So page 30. Yeah. So you can see there the personnel part-time, that was the blight officer. And what we did is we brought on a consultant to fill that role. So we were just looking to shift the money from part-time position to consultant, just to codify that change that we had made. And then the bigger one is the new assistant building official.
So hang on one second.
Sure.
So, sorry. So the part-time, yeah, I'm sorry. So the 45 is being just moved down to the consultant down below.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
sorry.
Yeah, because that's how we filled the position,
Yep,
so it makes
that's
more
fine.
sense
Yep.
to run the budget that way. So in terms of new personnel, we were looking to add a new assistant building official. That would be a grade 3, level 3 position. 82,347 is the rate on that. Currently, the department's operating with a director and an assistant director and a number of part-time people who've been kind of filling in to help out. One of the issues with running on a part-time basis is you don't have the consistency. So you'll have somebody who will do a plan review, but then not be available to go out and do the inspection. And it definitely affects the consistency and our ability to kind of manage that process. So we're looking to add a new full-time position for an assistant building official to basically replace the consultants that we've been utilizing for several years now. By adding that personnel, it also helps in terms of our economic development focus. You know, now we'll have additional resources in order to do the inspections and to give developers the proper service that they need. And just in terms of statistics, the building department collected $1.6 million in fees last year. and process 3,000 permits typically, and 3,000 to 4,000 inspections annually. So, so the department's quite busy.
All right, so there's a paperwork shuffle that unfortunately is going on up here.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the budget that we got from the finance department. I'm not seeing an additional person in this budget, unless it's something you handed out this morning,
No, it's not.
No, it's not anything that came.
all right?
And it should be reflected in the
It's not in the
employment
chart
table
either.
as well.
Yeah, it's not in the chart.
Right.
So let's
there's-
try and make
so
sure
there's
we're all
two-
looking at the
two
same
different
thing here.
things.
Yeah, no, I
Right.
apologize. That's, I kind of take a Lynn's package here.
Well, let's find out what we're supposed to look at here, because,
But when you say that, you're right. The full-time position under building inspection does not reflect that change.
And the overall personnel full-time should go up by 82,347.
Correct,
Right.
correct, yep.
So in addition to the numbers, there
Yep.
should also be a person. And likewise, the replacement of the part-time town employee blight officer with a consultant, that just needs to be clear.
Well, it comes out of the part-time
that
position.
consultant.
It comes out,
And then gets added in as a consultant.
right, exactly.
okay,
But
but
no, you're absolutely right, that the full-time position line item, that should definitely be increased by that 82,000.
well, let's start with the basics. The budget I'm looking at for next year, the proposal is 475,041. Is that the right number, sans this one individual we're talking about?
Yep, but that does not include that $82,000
Okay.
for that consultant.
All right.
Yep.
The 9% increase you see there, I think that was union increases. And I think that gets reflected in some of the other departments as well.
Okay, so I know I interrupted you. Could you mind finishing up your
Sure,
pitch?
that was pretty much it as far as the
Well,
new assistant building official.
Well, tell us, please, what the new assistant building official would do, please.
Well, he's basically going to provide services for plan reviews and also inspections, which is essentially what the building department does. So it's just another personnel to add to the two full-time people that we have that do those services.
Are we behind?
What's that?
Are we behind in plan review and inspections?
Yeah, it's definitely a frustrating thing. There's a lot of work going on,
Yeah.
and we try to fill that need with the part-time people.
Right.
But that's hard. The guys work a couple of days a week, and then they're gone for a week. Somebody does a plan review, it makes sense for that person to be the one that goes out in the field to do the inspections.
Right.
And you can't always do that because you don't have the personnel on a consistent basis.
So currently, the idea is to hire this person in order to replace the consulting line, which we, in the current budget, is $130,000. Again, whether that's one or two people, it doesn't really matter. But the idea is to swap $82,000 in salary for what we're planning to expend, perhaps more, which is $130,000. However, if you also build in the benefits
Right.
to an individual,
Right, it's more than that 82.
it's certainly more than that 82, and we could get up into the, 120
Into
range pretty
correct.
quickly.
Correct.
So then the question still is this the best bang for our buck, to get one person full-time rather than, I don't know how many consultants on a part-time basis?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the better route. Ilio, I don't know if you wanted to chime in on this at all, but
Yeah, it probably is cheaper to, less expensive to hire a consultant. However, when you do plan review for a job and then you try to do the inspection, the inspector, that a part-time inspector will do the inspection, but then it won't be in the office next day to answer all the questions about the inspection. Really, we need to help just about everybody from the office. You'll take phone calls, do plan review, post inspections, do research, all kinds of stuff.
So if we hire this person, we won't have any consultants, or we will still?
Well, Nancy, I
Well,
just want to interrupt for 1 second, because Nancy, I apologize. You mentioned 130,000, which I do see under Public Works, but I don't think we're talking about that. We're talking the building inspection department, correct?
That's correct. It will
Yeah.
replace.
So I don't know that that's, sorry.
Okay,
Ilya,
then my mistake. What
Yeah.
is the current expense or budgeted amount?
I don't think there is
for
one, and add to staff,
Okay.
right?
well, if you look at page 30,
Yes.
the current, the actual from last year was 91,417 for consultants. And that's the number that we'd be
Okay,
replacing.
all right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, let's let Mike make a comment, if you don't mind.
So look,
Sure.
first of all, we got to get better on our side to have this, to eliminate this confusion here, okay? So I'll address that internally in terms of why Andy's presenting something that no one sees here. So we tried to work hard at that. We're going to get better at that, okay? But let me explain on the consultant side. We terminated the last consultant. I wasn't happy with him. We called them all in, Elio remembers, and I read them the riot act. Because I'm not happy with the level of customer service with some of these consultants. Because you got to understand this, that I'm out there as a champion for the town, bringing in new businesses, trying to. And then when the businesses come in to try to get positioned in their prospective locations, we can't have consultants who are making it difficult for them and working against the town. So after I read everybody the riot act, and Elio is a great building official. He gets a lot of positive comments from businesses. So then 2 months later, we had the same problem. I called Lynn, get rid of him. He's not going to be working for the town of North Haven anymore. So I think what's happening here is that they're making a recommendation to us that the consultants in some cases are unreliable, and that's why. Now, we have to deal with, this board has to deal with the incremental expense of a full-time employee versus a consultant, and that's something that we'll vet through in the budget process. That's some background, okay?
Thank you, Mike.
All right. Sorry for the confusion.
Yeah, no, I apologize, and then I don't know why it was set up this way. It shouldn't have been. All right, well, nonetheless. So the next thing I want to do is get into the departmental budgets. So I'm on page 29 right now. Land use, planning and zoning, inland wetland zoning board of appeals, so the majority of that page. Really no changes. That 9% reflected under land use, that again is, I think, related to the union contracts and increases. There's no additional personnel. So now if we move to page 30, which was the building department, that personnel full-time, again, that shows that 9% increase. That's the union change.
Which one was, sorry, this is, oh, you're back in billing.
Yep, page 30.
Yeah,
right.
okay.
Yep, the full-time personnel.
Yep.
So that's just the change, the normal union change. Let's see, dues and expenses, we're showing a 34% increase there. That is essentially to pay for the cost of electronic versions of the 2022 building codes and the International Code Council manuals. So that's basically our, to purchase copies of the latest and greatest codes so that we have them in-house and available for the staff. Let's see. That's essentially it for changes under building.
Can you remind me the comment on blight that you made earlier on? We're hiring a consultant for this year, but how are we supporting blight currently?
Well, no, currently we have a consultant. So in May of '22, the part-time employee that we had that was doing that work retired.
Got it.
So instead of bringing on a new part-time employee, Lynn hired a consultant to fill that role. So that's why we're just looking to shift the money so that it makes it consistent with how we're actually spending it.
Yeah, the way I'm looking at it is there's $40,000 in the budget for this past year. That's the blight consultant.
There's two consultants here, Nick, and I think what we got here is, we got the part-timer line 2, the 45,000, right?
Yep.
Which left, I guess, right? And we're replacing that person with the consultant down there on the 45 and 20,
I got it.
right?
Yep.
And then the conversation we just had with Nancy was, okay, there's a request for an assistant building official, which is not here, but it's roughly 82,000, right?
Yep.
That will be offset somewhat by the reduction in consultants, which was the actual of 91 and 22, and they're budgeting 40 for the upcoming year. I think that's the dynamic here, right?
Right, but I think that even that 40, I think, goes away, and I think that compounded the error on this sheet.
So you think the 40 should even go away?
Cross off that 40.
Correct.
40
Right.
gonna go away, the 82's for net we're up
The 82 will
42.
get added to the full-time personnel list. at
Right.
the top.
So your 82 plus benefits is going to be a little higher than the 91, right?
Right, I would expect so, correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Okay, remaining on page 30, under engineering. Let's see, the gas, oil, and vehicle maintenance line item goes up, I added $500 to the budget on that. The vehicle that I drive is a 2004 Nissan Armada that's got about 100,000 miles on it. When I went out Thursday to try to go out to do a site inspection, it didn't start. So I'm having a lot of problems with it, and it's definitely due to be replaced at some point. I didn't want to bring it in this year, but maybe next year we'll talk about it. But I just want to make sure I got enough money in there to take care of maintenance. We spent quite a bit of money this past year sinking into it, so I just want to make sure I'm prepared.
Can you just touch on it looks to me like the senior clerk on the personnel line, we got a reduction of 2% here. Is the senior clerk growing from full-time to part-time? What's the story there? So you look at I'm on page 43, which is
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
that's the personnel in the department, right? So you got a bump for the town engineer 2, but we got a clerk going from 43 to 25 roughly.
Yeah, and that would reflect the actual time that, my admin person
Yeah.
is part-time at this point.
Okay.
And that would reflect the hours that she's actually putting in.
Okay. Thank you.
In the write-up, Alec, the engineer number 2, I believe, is referred to, is that the assistant town engineer?
It is.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that the language is exactly the
Yep,
same
yep, that's
in both
assistant.
places, so, there we go.
Which we're still in the hunt for that position.
Oh, so it hasn't been filled?
It has not been filled yet,
Ah,
no.
okay.
No, I've been trying.
Got it. That's important.
Anything else on operating expenses?
That's about it, really. I mean, some again, some of the other departments, some union changes, that's about it. And then the next thing I wanted to get into was capital.
Let me just check with the members before you go. Any questions from the members on the expense side before he hits the capital? Okay, go ahead, please.
Okay, I'm on page 38 at this point, and I have a new line item in there for transportation consultants, $150,000. The town was contacted by the state of Connecticut about American with Disabilities Act, and although I think we're doing pretty well compliance-wise when it comes to buildings, when it comes to our infrastructure, that's a whole other story. And what this does is this relates to handicap ramps and sidewalks and those kinds of things throughout town. I think the expectation on the federal level is that we are fully compliant, and all of our sidewalks, all of our handicap ramps, everything works fully in accordance with ADA requirements. I went to a seminar to learn a little bit more about this entire process, and I learned very quickly that most towns in Connecticut are kind of in the same boat. So what this $150,000 is basically to pay for a consultant to do an assessment, an ADA assessment of our overall town. So that's looking at all the buildings, it's looking at all of our infrastructure, so all the sidewalks, handicap ramps, all of those kinds of things. Where we have sidewalks, where we have handicap ramps, they should be compliant. And that's really what it kind of comes down to. So a $150,000 fee was to pay for a consultant to do that inspection, to basically develop a plan for us moving forward as to what we would need to do to be in full compliance. And generally, that's the way it works as far as the ADA is concerned. When these plans are developed, the implementation on these plans is generally spread out 10, 20, 30 years. So you have a lot of time to invest in that. So this would be the first step towards that process. But we know that there's quite a few municipalities in the state of Connecticut that are not compliant. And I think we're probably in better shape than a lot of them.
Under Bill's Department of Public
Is the
Works.
standard practice to hire
Mike.
a certified ADA consultant to go about this, or do some towns understand the code and do their own assessment and plan?
Some towns may be able to do it, in-house. It just depends on staffing. I would feel a lot more comfortable having a consultant that has prepared these plans before. There's a lot of specificity in how these plans are put together, and we'd kind of be making it up as we
I know,
go
it's a
along. If we
question.
hired a consultant and get somebody who's done this
Yeah.
before, who understands the process.
Okay.
So
And so there's no timetable
There really isn't a timetable on it, no.
that is imposed on us in terms of compliance?
Yeah, the only way it would be imposed is if the feds decided they wanted to come down on us and make an example of us, you know. But again, you know, given that there's quite a few municipalities in the state that are kind of in the same situation that we are, I would say for probably the vast majority of municipalities. This, to me, is kind of a long-term plan. This is something that we need to start thinking about and figure out where we're going to go with this, because at some point that could happen.
But the burden of proof is on us, in other words, as opposed to the federal government will come to our town and inspect us. We instead have to take the initiative to show them this is what we've done.
Correct.
Got it.
We're moving
Okay,
in the
I just
correct
want to be clear
direction.
about
That's exactly it, yeah.
Got it.
You know, and if they decided they wanted to come down and do an inspection on us, the first thing they'd be looking for would be this plan that we're looking to prepare. So and I think the bottom line is they want to know that we have a plan to move forward. We have a plan to get into full compliance at some point in the future, and that's what it's really kind of all about.
So Andy, two things on this item.
Yeah.
So is this covering just town-owned properties or every property in town?
Well, it's all town-owned properties and then any infrastructure related. So it would be sidewalks and curbs within the entire town, anywhere,
But only adjacent to town buildings or across the entire town?
across the entire town
Okay,
for the infrastructure side.
all right. And then I guess my other comment, which Mike has the same comment, I believe, is that I'm not so sure this really belongs in capital, Ingrid. I mean, it's an operating expense. It's unusual, it's large, it's one time. I mean, capital items, what we all know and understand, it's generally hard goods, right? So we can talk about that offline, but I mean, I'm not sure it belongs in this particular section.
I think we put it there because it's a one-time hit, so it was
Yeah.
a one-time charge. But
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think we also put it there for exposure, since
Yeah.
it wasn't going to happen.
Right.
In the current budget.
Yeah.
It's just for exposure to
Right.
talk about
Okay.
that.
Mr. Frieda, is this something that ARPA could cover, since it is a one-time fee and it is actually a compliance with a federal requirement?
Well, I'm not sure if we have the money for ARPA right now because we're already encumbered, but the other reason we put it in capital is we might be able to file for a grant to subsidize it.
Certainly to execute the plan. I wasn't sure about actually formulating the plan itself, but maybe.
Yeah. I have another view on this, Andy and I have talked about, and but I'll save that for another time, okay? So,
is the scanning yours as well, Andy?
Yep, so the scanning services, so over the past 4 years, I've dedicated a bit of resources to trying to digitize basically our town records. So I've got a series of flat files with, drawings stacked in them, 4 or 5 inches high each drawer. With basically all the records. It's all of the subdivisions that were developed over time, all of the roadway improvements, all those, basically all of the drawings that basically define how the town was put together. So what I've been doing is I've been trying to digitize those and catalog them so that we have easy access to them. I found that the reference materials that I have to that store of information is lacking in many cases. So I've taken it upon myself to go through the process to try to start that process to digitize all that information. We brought a consultant in to talk to us about basically taking on the balance of that information as far as scanning is concerned. And that's what I was asking for in the budget, would be some money to help to pay for the completion of that project that I had started. And the end goal on that essentially is to allow us very easy access to any information. So, if I have a developer coming in and he wants to know what information we have on a specific piece of property, having this information quickly at hand allows me to just access everything we have and provide him with copies in a very quick and efficient manner. And that's kind of what we're working towards.
Andy, the verbiage says that the quote was $18,500 and it's a one-time fee. So what's the difference between the $18,500 and the $85,000 or so that's here?
So there's two pieces to this, the engineering and the building department. So I just discussed the engineering services, and that's, like I said, essentially our drawings. On the building department side, and the building department is part of that same quote that you have there. Currently, the building department is operating with Municity, which is our software, and that's our permit tracking software. And when that system was set up, essentially we moved to a full digital system then. So when somebody comes in to submit an application for a building permit, they fill the application out through the Municity system, they upload their drawings, everything becomes digital as part of that process. And the building department right now is actually starting to mark drawings up digitally, which allows that information to be included. But the problem is that all the new information that we're collecting now for all these permits is electronic. All the old information is still in paper files. And there's filing cabinet after filing cabinet after filing cabinet of paper files of this information. So the second half of that scanning services was basically to scan all of the building department records.
I got it.
And that allows us to put all the building department records into Municity so that we have one source for all of that data. So right now what they have to do is if it's a new permit, a new thing that's going on, it's going to be available electronically within in the Municity software. If it's old, then they have to pull the paper files out. And that's just very cumbersome to try to work our system through two different data stores. And that's really the issue. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. If we can scan all that information in, we'll have everything in Municity and it'll all be covered.
Okay, thank you. Members? Okay, anything else?
I think that's pretty much it, yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mike, do you want to come up? One second.
Board of Ed next, or-
Want to go to that? No. Okay. Mike, hold on one second.
Oh, hold on. Mike, I think we'll do the Board of Ed next, okay? Let's do the Board of Ed next.
All right, so why don't we do the Board of Ed next, and after they're done, we'll take a 5-minute break and then do Public Works. All right?
He thought he was doing public work.
Yeah, it's okay.
So-
Yeah. I was looking at the original schedule, which had these guys last today.
Yeah, okay.
That's right. So Howard, while we're doing a little IT work there, we did get previously a Board of Ed package, and then we had one delivered today. There's no difference, right? They're both dated the 17th.
They should.
Right, okay. Yeah, just introduction. You can introduce your board members as well if you'd like. Yeah.
Good morning, Board of Finance. My name is Patrick Stirk. I'm Superintendent of Schools. I'm accompanied by Howard Warlow, our Director of Finance, Operations, and Human Resources. We have a couple of board members in the audience tonight. Chairperson Bathrick, Vice Chair Peterson, and Ms. Devlin as well. And Ms. Gabriel in the back. as well as Assistant Superintendent McKenna is joining us as well today. So good morning. Today I will be presenting the Board of Education's budget recommendation for the 2023-2024 school year. There's little change to the overall budget at all levels and within all departments. The far majority of our increases are a result of contractual obligations and cost of benefits. And within this year's budget, there's a proposal to retain 4 full-time positions and add an intervention position that was in place prior to the pandemic. There are also a few additions to the athletic department, the athletic department, that Howard and I will elaborate on further in the presentation. So the budgeting process is one of the most important tasks that the district and the Board of Education take on to reach the objectives within our mission statement. The North Haven Public Schools mission statement is as follows. It is the mission of the North Haven Public Schools, in collaboration with students, parents, and community, to develop responsible, educated, and productive global citizens who can thrive in an ever-changing world. The vision of a graduate is the foundation for this budget proposal. The VOG provides direction, priorities, and frames how the district will utilize the allocated funds. So in creating this budget recommendation, we were committed to maintaining these following priorities. Maintain the district's focus on improving achievement and providing extracurricular opportunities for all students, meet all contractual obligations, and utilize the vision of a graduate to drive budget planning. So the proposed budget recommendation provides the following: resources to educate 3,182 students, mental health, nutrition, and medical care to allow students to access instruction, specialized services required for all students to meet their potential, diverse opportunities for students to engage in activities outside of their curricular pursuits, and transportation to and from school. So North Haven Public Schools continues to excel in academic areas and is providing numerous opportunities and activities to support the whole student. This portion of the presentation will highlight a few of these achievements, as well as how we are measuring the return on the board's and the community's investment. So the District Reference Group, or DIRG, is a method in which Connecticut groups similar school districts. The grouping takes into account annual household income, students who receive free and reduced lunches, and other factors as well. So this grouping, or DIRG, allows people to compare multiple areas like performance, expenditures, staffing, etc., of similar school districts. So the average PPE per pupil expenditure for DIRG D is $19,365. North Haven's PPE is $19,184. So North Haven spends $181 less per student per year than this average. So an additional roughly $574,000, which is just shy of 1%, would be needed to meet the average PPE for our DIRG. So for comparison purposes, North Haven is $3,200 from the lowest PPE and $5,700 from the top spending district in our DIRG. So this chart shows the highest and lowest spending districts within our DIRG. North Haven ranks 11th of 24 districts, and there's little overall change in ranking of the districts from last year to this year. So the district's achievements reflect a substantial return on investment based on the district's funding comparisons. Last school year, North Haven ranked 3rd in the Smarter Balanced Assessment for English Language Arts and 6th in the area of math. North Haven's 5th graders ranked 2nd in our DIRG on the Next Generation Science Standards Assessment. So we are spending below the average in many areas and achieving above average results within our DIRG. And our goal is to maintain and build upon this success. So the district was also able to provide the following to our students: community-based health services at all 6 schools. Initially, these services were solely provided at the middle and high school. However, thanks to the insight and persistence of Jen Stewart, our Director of Student Services, the district was able to make these services available to all students within our district. Although these services are not directly accounted for in the budget, they require planning and time at the district level. The Unified Arts offerings for elementary students were revamped this past year in order to incorporate science, technology, engineering, and mathematics otherwise known as STEM classes. And our students elementary students receive these classes on a weekly basis, and Melinda worked very diligently to reallocate funds in order to provide this much-needed upgrade. Jen Kay, our IT director, and the IT department purchased hundreds of ebooks for our students to read in school and at home. These titles were curated by our English language arts coordinator to ensure a variety of titles and levels were available. Melinda has also spent significant time establishing a relationship with Goodwin University in order to improve and increase offerings in the area of career and technology education, specifically in the area of manufacturing. But not listed in these highlights are the upgrades to the physical and digital security throughout the district. Many of these upgrades go intentionally unseen, and a conscious effort has been made to significantly fortify the infrastructure over the past few years. So as a reference point, the town of North Haven allocates roughly 52% of its budget to the Board of Education. This ranks 21st out of 24 districts in our DIRG. So only 3 other districts allocate less than this percentage to their boards of education. North Haven is 10% below the DIRG D average in this area.
Patrick, does that include the bonds the school, that the town carries for the school?
No.
So you factored that out of your numbers here?
Correct.
Okay.
And I bring this point forward only to provide perspective in that the board's annual budget requests are appropriate and in line with the districts within our DIRG. So the Board of Education budget. The increase for the 23-24 school year is $1,727,624, which brings the annual Board of Education budget to $61,893,954. This represents a 2.87% increase from last year's approved budget. This increase will meet our contractual obligations, healthcare benefits, and increases in utilities. It also covers positions and programs which will be highlighted later in the presentation. So I'll now turn the next few slides over to Howard, and he'll provide an overview and address the major budget drivers.
As the chart indicates, salaries, non-salary payroll, and benefits make up 78% of the budget and are increasing 4.4%, 9.3%, and 1.5% respectively. When adding in all other non-discretionary categories such as utilities, facilities, rentals and leases, transportation, insurance, and the non-discretionary portion of professional services, it raises the non-discretionary portion of the budget to 96% of the total budget, which is in line with last year. Aggregate non-discretionary spending increased by 3.03% for the fiscal 24 versus fiscal 23, and aggregate discretionary spending decreased by 0.76%. The next 2 slides are just visual representations of that prior slide, but visually they show in dollars and percent how much the non-discretionary makes up of the budget. This chart is showing the percent of increase for each category. There are a couple of items to note here. The first is salaries, which increased by 4.42% overall, would have increased by only 3.8% if the new positions, 3 elementary teachers, a reading interventionist, and the athletic trainer were not included.
Can you slow down there if you don't mind for one second, Howard?
Absolutely.
I did have a question. So tell me, please, if you have the raw number. So the addition of 3 elementary school teachers, so how much is that item, if you would, please?
I don't have the raw number offhand, but on average, they're in the 60,000, so about 180,000.
Okay. And they were funded by an ESSER grant, right?
ESSER 3.
And ESSER 3 initially funded 5 teachers, and because of the increase in enrollment, we are now moving 3 of those teachers. Because
Right.
ESSER runs out, we are moving 3 of those teachers into the.
I recall we converted, I think, 2 last year.
No, we did not.
We did convert 2 grant positions last year to full-time positions in the budget. We
But
did.
not out of those 5.
Maybe not. They were grant funds,
Yeah.
though. So previous to ESSER, we didn't have these 3 teachers? Where were these 3 teachers?
Those 5 teachers were brought on to lessen the class size coming out of the pandemic in grades K through 3 across the district. And as Howard mentioned, due to an increased enrollment, we do need to retain 3 of those teachers.
How much is enrollment going up in the elementary schools?
I don't have a exact number on that for you, but it's the highest numbers we've seen across the district in each of our schools in some time, at least during my tenure here. But I can definitely find.
We'll need those numbers.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's a good request, Mike. Okay, I'm sorry, Howard. There's a couple more. I know they're on the budget highlights. So we have a reading interventionist. Talk about that.
I'm going to hit that in a little bit if you
Okay,
don't mind.
yep, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, do you want to finish up? Or?
Yeah, good.
Okay.
Yeah, keep going.
And the second is a non-salary payroll, specifically the stipend line, which increased by 13.51%, would have only increased by 2.1%. Without the new coaches, the after-school support, detention stipend, and special education teacher summer hours, which are all stipends contractually required, that were not included in last year's budget, for the most part, were not incurring due to the pandemic and only truly were started back into full this current school year. And so we'll continue them over into the next school year.
So you talked a little fast for me, and that's coming from a guy who talks fast to begin with.
Sorry.
So you got to hit that again.
Sure. So if you look at the, it's line 111N, it's object 111N on the budget.
What page is that, do you know?
Tim, look at page one.
Page 1?
Page 1. The third line down, going from 625 to 710,000.
I'm sorry, you're talking about the certified stipends, which
Certified
was
stipends, correct.
625 going to 710. Okay, I got it.
Okay.
And so that's
a
the
13.51% increase. But the reason for that is that there is new stipends that are being added in there that weren't in there because due to the pandemic, we weren't doing detentions, we weren't doing after school, we weren't doing a lot of that because of the pandemic. And so they weren't in the budget, so now they're being put back into the budget, and that's causing the increase.
But I take it what you're saying is previous to the pandemic, we had these positions and
This would have
the
been-
numbers for 22 and 23 would have been higher anyways, you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
I just wanted to highlight that
Yeah.
item because that's a quite
Okay.
large number.
Good.
That's all I have for that.
All right. Thank you, Howard. So before moving on to new positions and programs, I just want to highlight a very important area that hits a major positive for the district. When Jen Stewart assumed the Director of Student Services position back in 2019, we made a conscious effort to lessen the number of students who were placed in an out-of-district special education school. Really the main reason for this is that we believe that students should be given every opportunity to be educated here in North Haven. In order to move this belief into action, we needed to add resources to enhance our district programs to support all of our learners. And as a result of these enhancements, we are beginning to see a significant decline in students who are placed in an out-of-district special education school. And as you can see, in 2019, there were 32 students at this type of placement, and at present, there are 18. A secondary benefit to this is that the district's budget line for tuition has decreased 18.4%. And this decrease has allowed us to offset costs that are out of our control, such as utilities and gas. For this proposal to address all the needs of the district, an increase in services in needed areas, and provide additional extracurricular opportunities for students, and still remain at a 2.87 increase is nothing short of miraculous. These types of efforts or offsets have allowed us to keep this request at a reasonable level. So planning for the future. This portion of the presentation will highlight the additional programs and positions included in this year's proposal. So 2 years ago, the district hired 5 elementary teachers using the ESSER III funding. The goal was to lessen the number of students in K-3 classrooms. Our intention was to keep these positions in place for 2 years. But due to an increase in enrollment, we proposed keeping 3 of these 5 positions in order to retain return class sizes to similar pre-pandemic levels. And I know you had asked about the need for those teachers. We try to keep our class sizes in kindergarten, 18 and under, first, second grade around 20 or so, and grades 3, 4, and 5. I mean, if you're pushing 25 students in a 4th and 5th grade classroom, that's big. So when we get to those numbers, we do have discussions of whether to open up new sections.
Patrick, could I just ask you, what is the percentage change in enrollment, say, over the last 3 years?
It's very steady, but there are pockets in different grade levels that we need to account for.
So overall,
Overall,
it's been if not.
7, 8 students.
Right.
I mean, I'm not factoring in the pandemic year, because that was a dip in enrollment simply due to
Sure.
lower kindergarten registration.
So overall, it's been very flat, but there have been pockets, and that's probably been true since the dawn of time, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's not actually true. For a long time, we used to get the numbers. The town steadily lost enrollment in the schools for as long as 10 years. And I think last year, I could be wrong here, was one of the years where we actually, I think, increased the enrollment.
We did.
In the schools. And again, I can't tell you whether that's elementary, middle, or high. I can't recall, Nancy, but we actually lost population for as long as 10 years, and it sounds like we're on the uptick.
10 years prior, like
10
10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for 10 years in a row, we lost
But
population.
but as of, I think it was 2007, we had about 3,500
Yeah,
students.
right.
We're now at 3,182.
Right, okay.
But over the past 5 to 6 years, we've held that number.
Yeah, okay.
yeah, so that's
Yeah.
my point, is that
Right.
we were on the decline,
Yes.
but we've been steady
Yeah.
with these pockets
Right,
in individual grades where
Right.
you might have a bubble,
Correct.
yeah.
right? So,
Exactly.
and as of this point, are there any students that are currently being educated virtually?
No.
Everyone is in person?
Everyone is in person with the exception of students who potentially have it in accordance to their IEPs.
Right. So the initial impetus during the pandemic to hire more people, I'm sure, was also to address this duality of some of the students were in person, some were virtual, and obviously you need more manpower in order to address that. But now we've kind of reverted back to everybody's in person.
Everyone's in person.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Sure. Also included in this proposal is a reading interventionist at the middle school. This position was in place prior to the pandemic. However, it would restore the academic support at the middle school to a pre-pandemic level. Due to a shortage of certified athletic trainers, one was recently hired to replace the services we have received from Quinnipiac Physical Therapy. There's an approximate increase of about $15,000 to the budget area as compared to 22-23. And also for an additional $20,000, this proposal includes a middle school volleyball team, a middle school unified sports program, and an assistant golf coach to assist with supervision. So North Haven is known for its commitment to education and the community's support of the Board of Education's annual operating budget.
Hey, Patrick.
Thank you all for your continued support. That's it.
As a public service announcement to the town, my understanding is we're currently looking for a location for the golf team.
We are.
And so
We certainly are.
maybe it's worth just saying that if anyone out in the audience or at home has a suggestion for the Board of Ed, that I'm sure would be appreciated.
And I can also plug, we need a middle school track coach, and bus drivers, and bus monitors, please.
Sure.
I may swap this job for the bus driver job. Okay, sorry, I interrupted you. Go
No, I
ahead.
actually,
Yeah.
right at the perfect time is my last
Okay.
couple words.
All right, do we want to touch on special ed or not, or, I know you had the one slide, which, by the way, is unbelievable, because we've talked about special ed at this meeting every year for years, and it's always a big number. But I know in the back you talk about it. I'm not sure if that's something you want to get into, Howard, or not.
Any big jumps in the
No, that's just generally
Very status
special,
quo.
yeah, it's very the status quo. It's
Okay.
Actually, what you're seeing, because, and you'll see it in the budget, a lot of the professional services went down because of that, because what's happening is we're bringing the students in, right? There's fewer students in that are being put out, so that's a lot of the special ed budget is the tuition, and you'll see that number going down. Right? So that's what,
So for example, if a student needs to attend an out-of-school special education, out-of-district special education school.
Right.
It may cost $60,000. We can hire a teacher for that who can service 3, 4, 5, 6 different students, so.
Okay.
5,600 is the object code on page 3. And you'll see that it's going from the 2023 was 2,500,000. It's going down to 2,069,000. So that's directly due to the fact that we're keeping more students in district and putting them out to places.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because it was on your budget drivers here, but I saw a big drop there. Members?
I'll let anyone else go. I have a lot of questions, so go ahead.
Why don't you start with happy questions?
Oh, so I'll start with a few. Okay. So just to recap kind of at the big level and then kind of working down, if you look at the Board of Ed budget, say over the last 5 years, starting with 2019-20 to 2023-24, it looks like the trend has been asking for a 5% increase, followed by a 2% increase, followed by a 2.9% increase, and now you're requesting an almost 3, let's say again, 2.9% increase. And over that 5-year period, that's a $7.3 million increase. This is exclusively from the town. That does not include all outside sources of funding from the federal and state governments and other sources. But that's 13.4% increase. So does that sound about right?
That does.
Okay. Again, just looking at the budgeted amount and the spent amount, the difference being unexpended or surplus. Howard, I just had one quick question for you about that. For the last fiscal year, that's 2021, 2022, back in August, you said that the surplus was $75,950. And then I believe at the November Board of Ed meeting, you said that it was $450,000. Is there some explanation for that difference between those two numbers?
Well, the two numbers, okay, this is the debate about what's surplus that you bring up. Over time you brought that up. So basically, because you're talking about the $200,000 that went into the capital budget.
No, I'm simply going based on your memos where you say in August it's this amount.
Also explained that $200,000 of that was put into the capital projects. Another 200. How much was put? Forget the amount. That was
$420.
$420 was put into medical. And then there was $75,000 that was left over. That was that I said was the surplus or the excess.
Okay.
Or 85. 85,000.
So those numbers still don't work. So it's a swing of 620, and you're saying it's a $450,000. This is what you've reported to the state is the operational surplus.
State, you've lost me. I don't know what I.
So the difference between 75 and 450, the swing is.
I have to.
Okay. All right. Just if you could get back to me,
so you're saying
that would be.
November.
In August, you said it was 76,000. In November, 450. That
My recollection is that Howard and I talked or exchanged emails, and because you've asked us before, and I believe the answer I got was what he said earlier.
Okay. And again, just to verify, just looking at the line items, it looks like the teacher salaries in aggregate, obviously there's going to be individual variation based upon step increases and so forth, but in aggregate is going up by about 2.84%. But the 18 administrator salaries, again, in aggregate is going up by 9.62%. Is that pretty accurate?
So there's a reason. The reason for that is there's the admin that's on special assignment, which is $163,200. If you take that out of the line, because you had to add another admin in there. So if you take that out, it's only a 3% increase.
Yeah, and what exactly was that again? This additional.
It's a personnel matter. It's not something we can get into.
Ah, okay. So it's simply added and.
But maybe just to further that a bit. So obviously, I see what Nancy's talking about here. That position was not budgeted last year, or was it just not filled? Not budgeted. Was the position?
I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's a position that was in place, but the amount budgeted for that position, the person that's currently in the position exceeded that budgeted amount. Correct.
And for whatever reason, you've also excluded the director of facilities from. There's like 2 different types of admin.
Right. He's got his own special line. We put that down on the bottom.
Yeah, and so why is that person, for the first time, carved out?
That was last year, too.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. So why is it carved out?
Because he's not certified.
I see.
Admins are certified, like technically I'm certified as a business manager. He's not certified as a director of facilities.
Can I just go back for 1 second? I didn't really finish my line of questioning on the other one.
Yes, please.
So the position was budgeted but not filled in 2023. Was it budgeted and filled in the previous year?
The position has always been filled. However, due to change in personnel, the current person who's filling that position exceeded their salary exceeded that line.
But not by 163,000.
No. It's a
It's
A
a
portion of
temporary
that.
replacement while that,
It's a
while
portion
that,
of that.
while that person is on leave.
Actually, it's an extra.
Well, I'm trying to figure out what it is exactly, Mike. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Take it.
So what's happening is because,
Maybe you can explain it better.
right, so basically, there was 17 admins last year.
Yeah.
correct? So that's the number. There's still technically 17, and admins consist of principals and assistant principals, myself, people like that. There's 17 of us out there.
Yeah.
Superintendent, assistant superintendent. There's an extra there's an 18th being budgeted, have to be budgeted in this year, that admin is on special assignment due to personnel issues that we can't discuss.
Okay, so
That whole
to
budget
put
is being carried
to put it
next year.
simply, if you don't mind, we generally have 17 admins. We have one person who's getting paid, I think,
Yes.
but for personnel reasons, he or she isn't performing their job, and so we had to add an 18th person. Is that fair?
That's fair to say.
Okay.
So why is it in the budget then, if they're not being paid?
No,
They
they're
are.
being paid.
This-
They are being
That's
paid.
They
why
are.
it's in the budget. They
Yes.
have to be carried.
Yes.
And,
Right.
and so it's a 0% change, even though
No.
it didn't exist in the
No.
previous year?
Because the starting point is zero.
It should be 100% then,
Well, it should be, yes, but.
right?
100% would be if it doubled, so.
Then it should be infinite, it should be infinity. If it's going from 0 to 164,
Yeah,
or 163, there should be a percent increase, I guess.
There's not a percent increase because it goes from 0 to a number. So it's just the way the math works, but it's,
Should be an exclamation mark.
I know.
Let's say it that way. Okay. And one other point is just that I noticed that the nurses, there are 7 of them now, is that right? School nurses?
Yes, 7.
Their line item increase is only 0.56%. Again, I'm just calling this to everyone's
There
attention.
was a lot of turnover.
Uh-huh.
We had a bunch of turnover, so you're taking high steps, and you're replacing them with low steps. The lowest steps, so that's the differential, that's why that costs, it's just the
I
way
see,
the
so
math works out.
it's just in terms of new people coming into the
Correct.
positions.
Yes,
Got
they
it.
have to start at step 1, you can't bring them in at step 5.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, historically, I believe the superintendent's role has been the highest paid position in our town, but now it appears as though there are 17 or 18 positions that are certainly among the highest, if not the highest, and in fact paid more than our police chief, more than our fire chief, more than the director of public works, more than our first selectman. It just seems like some of these salaries and the increases, some of them 11% in a single year after a series of increases each year. So these are not step increases. This just seems out of line and disproportionate to the other people who are working in the school district. So
However, they are in line with other districts within our DIRG in order to stay competitive and keep top-notch people and continue to have our school district performing at the level it does. We do need the administrators who are highly talented in this district. We need to retain them and recruit them when needed.
And the 11% is because that person is taking on additional duties that position did not have this year. So that includes it. It's almost like a promotion. So you have to add to that because she's taking on additional duties, additional supervision.
So she has a new title.
She does.
Yeah, adding the security, she's taking over security.
Okay, all right. And I'd just like to tackle this idea of the district reference group, since that and the PPE was a big portion of your presentation. So I think the idea of the district reference group is a really good one in terms of being a classification system in which districts have public school students with similar socioeconomic status and needs are grouped together. Grouping like districts together is useful in order to make legitimate comparisons among districts. However, I think you'll agree that District Group D is a very diverse group of municipalities.
100% agree.
And so the decision-making ability that we have as a Board of Finance using this particular collection of municipalities, I think, is somewhat limited because, for example, what exactly could we learn from the town of East Granby that has 5,000 in their population? We are a population of 24,000. Or the city of Milford, which has 52,000 in their population. almost a little over 5,000 students. They're just different in terms of their overall profile. I understand the idea of having the denominator and trying to equilibrate everything for the purpose of comparisons, but in the in the end, I don't think that it adds too much, and so I think that trying to be able to calculate PPE. First of all, I'd like you to be able to just explain to everyone how exactly PPE is calculated. What goes into it?
So it's a number of students in the district with the overall operating budget, and take that, divide that by the number of students, and you get your PPE. Does not include, as Mr. Donahue said earlier, any of those bonded items or anything.
Does it include capital expenditures for land, building, equipment? None of those things. So all of those things, in my opinion, are actually a reflection of the town's investment in our educational system, both the bonded projects as well as the capital improvements. So it's somewhat of a skewed calculation. Of course, everyone is using the same definition, so I understand that. But
It's somewhat of a level playing field. Best we can.
To some extent. Again, not everyone has a relatively new high school, a brand new middle school, a security bonded system, a bonded improvement to their athletic programs. So that's going to vary from municipality to municipality. But in terms of, again, the district reference groups, significantly smaller towns than North Haven, like East Granby and Old Saybrook, with lower enrollment, also have higher PPE than North Haven. For the most part, significantly larger towns than North Haven, such as Milford and Wallingford, with higher enrollment, also have higher PPE than North Haven. So unfortunately, there isn't really this direct correlation with either the size or the PPE, and I'm not sure how much we can actually derive from these comparisons with towns that are nothing like ours. I remember Dr. Cronin said many years ago that Wethersfield is actually the closest to North Haven in terms of population, enrollment, PPE, and overall demographics. But again, in terms of comparisons, I think that it's kind of limited information. And if you really look at
But Nancy, if I could interject for a second.
Sure.
I understand your point, and I understand why it was shown on the slide, that the budget itself isn't based on PPE, that they gave it to us as a reference point, and I was aware, as you certainly are, and the Board of Ed is, that there's a big divergence of communities within that group. But if we wouldn't mind focusing that on the budget dollars, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Well, I mean, they're asking for more money, and
Right.
ultimately that more money will contribute to this per pupil expenditure that they're using as an index of how much we're investing in.
Yeah, and the other
each
towns will
student.
budget more, and that 19 and change number will ratchet up. I've seen this stat every year I've sat on this board, and we've always been in the middle.
Right, right.
I mean,
But
that's
for
just
new
the
members
facts,
of the
right.
board, as
Yeah,
well as for the
right.
people that are listening at home,
Right.
I think it's a very important to make
Right.
point to make. And ultimately, I fail to see a real correlation between PPE and the Next Generation Accountability Index. In some cases, there's a direct correlation. In some cases, there's an inverse correlation, and in some cases, it's completely all over the board. So I think that North Haven has lower than average PPE and higher than average NEA score. So what do you do with that? I think what really matters is how the money is used. And so I just like to make that point. And again, getting back to the point that was made before, your report says that you're going to be facing $1 million decrease in federal funding. Is that accurate?
Because the ESSER funds run out.
Because the ESSER funds run out. So the plan is to have taxpayers absorb the money that obviously we will not have as a result of ESSER funds running out.
No, we were very planful in how we put together the ESSER 3 in order to not face a cliff such as that. The only thing we are proposing to bring over, I believe, are those three teachers due to enrollment that we would need to provide either way for next year.
Right, but as the chairman pointed out, we brought on 2 last year. again, with the same idea that we're trying to slowly transition those that we had, the total number that we increased, again, during the pandemic and with federal funding, we're now trying to roll over to actually be included in our budget. So 2 last year and 3
But
this
those
year.
that would have been proposed this year, regardless of that, so like we would have needed those teachers, we just happen to have them right now, as we need to retain them as opposed to hiring them when the next year starts.
Okay. And is the plan to continue to do that until we have covered all of the faculty that were brought on under
No,
ARPA?
it's based on enrollment, so there's no plan, we're reacting to the pockets as we spoke about earlier
Right.
to ensure that they have appropriate.
But the total enrollment, you said, was also flat.
At this point, yeah.
Right. So when you say increase enrollment, it's just,
I think you said the increase in enrollment was within the elementary schools, and that
Right.
was one of the asks we had, that we'd ask Howard to please deliver to the finance office, so we'd have the information.
so we have those numbers and we can
That was
actually
the
see
ask,
what the
correct.
change is, right?
Right.
Okay, and what fraction of students currently, would you say, are by definition economically disadvantaged, so that we have some understanding as to this policy of providing free lunches?
So I think Howard can confirm this. Our numbers have been a little skewed in free and reduced simply because every student has received free lunch for the past however many, 24 months maybe. So our numbers are starting to level out a little bit. We're starting to get a better picture of it. However, anything that we would be able to report to might not be accurate because families haven't needed to fill out the forms for free and reduced lunches because everything's been free. So we're actually sending an email out to parents to remind them, please fill out your form so you can be eligible for free and reduced lunch.
And so that is a current change? You're going back to
Correct.
paying, students have to pay for lunch unless they
Effective
qualify?
January. Yeah.
Okay,
So the
that's
state
helpful.
had smart funds, I don't know if you're aware of those.
Yes, I did remember
They
that.
received $353,000, I think I put it in my report
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the month, and so basically those funds ran out in December.
Mm.
And so we actually used the funds that the federal government had paid us from the free lunches.
Mm-hmm.
That was part of the profit, that's part of the profits that came in for all those, because it was, what we paid out was less than what they provided to pay us.
Right.
So we used that to pay the full month of December for everyone. And
Mm-hmm.
then effective January 3rd, when they came back to school, that's when the paid lunches kicked in.
Right.
And at that point, we also started to collect, well, even before that, we started collecting the applications for the free and reduced. And so we've seen a large influx of those. And they've been coming in, and we continue to email out to the parents and let them know that the free and reduced is available and that they need to apply for it. And so we are seeing those come in, and we are going to continue. So I should be able to get a report within the next month or so that gives us the number that I think you're looking for. So
Sure.
that will be in one of my future monthly reports that goes to the board.
Great.
of Finance.
And in addition to the SMART grant, I think you also got another grant like last April for about $60,000, is that right?
So that's what's called the supply chain grant, and
Yep.
we're also getting another one now. That
Okay.
should be coming in shortly. I think the number's gonna be closer to 40,000, but again, the 60,000 is supply chain, but that has to go, and Chartwell's has to use that to buy supplies.
So just for
that is what
supplies.
So we can't use that for free
Understood.
meals.
I see. So, okay. So that's helpful. If anyone else has any other questions, I'm happy to swing back.
Why don't we pivot to the other members for just a moment? Mike, seems like Mike had a couple questions.
Nick, do you have anything yet?
I'm good.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, a lot of what I speak about has to do with the bigger picture here. The teacher and administrator contracts, can you tell us what year they're in out of what sort of term that they have?
Teachers it's a 3-year term,
Yeah.
and they are up in 2025. Administrators are, I believe, up in 2024 because we had an opener recently, and that's also a 3-year contract.
Okay, so 2024, and since this budget is 2023-2024, so it's the last year of the administrator contract and the middle year of a 3-year teacher contract.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And with regard to each, some years in the past have included annual, you could call them cost of living increases, if you want, and steps. This time, for this budget that we're speaking about here, is there a step increase as well as an annual cost of living increase for the teachers?
Yes.
Well, there's always step increase. That's every year.
Well,
This is
there's
step-
some years in the past, we've skipped a step, I believe.
I guess it's good, but my understanding of the way the teachers' contracts work is that it's based on the individual and the number of years that they're employed. So there's always a step increase
And from
once you
time
hit.
to time,
Right.
Sometimes there has not
They might be.
Could be.
They
Yeah,
might
could
be
be.
frozen on a step
Yeah.
due to
Yeah.
the
Right.
economic climate.
Right.
Okay. And aside from the step, or what is the average increase for each teacher in terms of percentage?
2.5?
2.5 plus step?
No, so.
No,
That's inclusive of
The
the
step is, no, the step is about 4.5% on average. It's 4.5, and it depends if the teacher moves. And then don't forget, there's also three columns, basically. You have the bachelor's, you have the master's, and you have the sixth year.
Right.
And you can, if you move from like a master's, which is part of the issues, becomes when a teacher moves from a master's to a sixth year, that's a larger increase.
All right, so 4.5 for the step, 2.5
For the top
The
steps.
top steps.
So when you get to the top step, you get a 2.5% increase. You don't get another step,
Your cost of
another
living.
step.
Okay.
You get to step 14, you get a 2.5% increase.
Okay, I was trying to divide between longevity and just some sort of automatic, maybe cost of living increase.
That's the way it works. If you want step, I'm just gonna pick a number, step 5, and that's what I came in at. And I go to step 6 next year automatically, that's a 4.5% increase.
Okay.
Takes account of
But
That's
if I-
inclusive
but
of
if I-
everything, of all
That's
factors.
it. That's what your salary is gonna go up. If I'm
Okay,
on
all
step
right.
14, my salary's gonna go up 2.5%.
Okay, because I was trying to divide it into an experience increase versus an across-the-board union-based annual
No, so the
increase.
steps remain flat across all 3 years of the contract. I think I know where you're going with this. So if you look at the steps aren't increasing by any percentage year over each contract. They stay flat. The top step is the only one that increases because that goes up by 2.5%.
Okay, all right, and the administrators, the same way, how much of a percentage increase per person on average was that?
Again, step is different. Step is, I think that's in the 4.5% range for a step.
It's less steps, it's only
But
5.
it's less steps, but it's 2, and then when you get to the top, it's 2.4.
All right, because we're trying to do the math a little bit, and in terms of what your contractual obligation is, what the impact is. And has there been any change in the contribution level to their medical insurance?
For the contract, it goes up.
That might be changing from last year to this year.
Yes.
They were right around, I think we were around 16% before,
16 or 17.
16 or 17, and that is getting steady, that's going
It
up
goes up a
another,
little bit every year.
another half percent usually.
I don't remember the exact number, but it does go up.
The number of positions in each category, you said there's one additional administrative expense. And for the teacher line, we've got the added 3, and is that it? Is that the only change in numbers on the teacher line?
Change of bodies, yes.
3.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you for just re-summarizing what you may have already said. The bus contract, I believe, we have a copy of that from previous budget hearings. I believe we're in year 4 of a 5-year contract. And so any expenses listed on those lines are a direct reflection of the contract itself, not necessarily a change in any of the terms of the contract, the amount of bus service, or any other factors. Yeah.
It's all related to the contract.
Yeah, so I mean, I had the same question. So it's almost $100,000, right? So it's 5.5%, give or take. So that's just the movement of the contract, right?
Correct. There's also the fuel line in there, because we have to buy fuel.
So that's within the same.
That's built into that line.
Okay,
It's not.
right.
It has that into that, but we're buying
Okay.
that from, we're buying that directly through on the state contract.
Okay.
The medical plan, medical costs, the increase is very modest, 1.78%. Amazing, I'll accept that, that's no problem there. it's being overseen or managed, or advised by Brown and Brown still, is that correct? Are you still as happy with their services as we have been in the past?
Very much so.
Yeah, they're very good. Did you hear, Mr. Green? Brown and Brown, very good.
Well, they are
They
doing
could-
great.
They could be good everywhere.
They're doing great, but also Blue Point's doing great on the town side, so that's something we're not changing.
Okay, I'll take that into consideration. The special ed and out of district.
Hey, Mike, I'm sorry to interrupt, but before we move off medical benefits, since we're on that category here, there is a significant reduction, in the dental insurance, so Howard,
I was going to ask the
150,000?
same. Right, thank you.
So, yeah, so that, again, they came in and it was around 150 this year. Again, there's more contributions being made for the contracts, we're contributing more. And again, I reached out to Brown and Brown about that, and they said that's what the actuaries are saying it's going to be. It's going to be significantly lower than last year.
Okay.
Based on the claims, I have no more data than that to provide.
I know we're self-insured on the medical side. This is not self-insured? This
It
is.
is, it's the same
That's
thing.
also self-insured,
They're saying
okay.
the claims are coming in lower.
Okay,
And again, the claims are also coming in, are projected to come in lower.
okay.
Plus then we have the reserves.
Yeah, I think they upped the fluoride level in the public water. Yeah. So,
Okay.
as I was saying, out-of-district costs for applications for the students and special ed expenses, and the application of the excess cost grants, that is an amazingly difficult science. I don't know how you forecast or how you budget that, but we understand the difficulty in that, and that can always throw a budget out of whack. And so I just wanted to say that, thank you for your insight and with regard to the current budget, there's always unforeseen situations. Do you see the budgeting of most of those lines, or your budget overall as being adequate? Are there any complications or challenges that we should know as a board for the current year's budget?
Current year?
Yes, the one that we're in right now.
So I think one of the things that it's not a challenge, and I don't know that it will be a challenge, but again, the state is having a hard time coming up with that calculation this year for whatever reason. I'm being told that it's being delayed. We, as always, last year, I think I explained to the board too, that we project at 70% of what we're going to get back. Last year, we got back 82%. So there's a differential there, and that's excess cash that goes towards that line. Again, for this budget year, current year, we projected 70. Again, the state came out, they are talking about, they don't know what the budget's going to be for that. So one of the things that we found out was they then classified every district into a category of where you would be if they had to cut the budget. And so I think the more needy, lack of a better term, needy districts are going to get in the 80 to 85% range. The middle category gets in the 75 to 77% range, and then the least needy districts, of which we are one of them. It's like the top out of 108, whatever many districts there are, we're like the top 60, we're in that range. We are going to get 70%. So that again plays into the variability of that line item calculation. So that's why we always go conservative and calculate at 70%, because we are considered a non-needy district.
So as Mr. Frieder said in the past, we are once again getting penalized for good management?
For fiscal responsibility, yes, sir.
But yet we got 82% last year.
Because the budget wasn't cut at the state level. Everyone got 82% last year. But if they cut the budget, they're going to give more to the needy districts and less to the less needy districts. And we are one of those.
So that wound up being a savings for the town.
So exactly, because I was able to apply more to the tuition line, which is, we talk about where all of a sudden we have the excess dollars at the end of the year. That's where most of that comes from. Because all of a sudden we're getting 12% more than we anticipated.
Right. And the risk is really for the town, it's not for the Board of Ed budget, because even if it comes below 70%, the town still has an obligation to provide the Board of Ed with that money. Isn't that true?
I don't know that answer.
What was the question, Nancy? Could you repeat that?
They can budget for a certain percentage from the state for reimbursement. But if they don't get that amount from the state, it is the town that actually absorbs the liability there. We as a town have to provide the Board of Education with the money that they need in order to actually execute their budget. So if it
Upon
comes
request.
below that, we, on the town side, have to absorb that. If it is above it, great. That winds up being a savings on your budget, and
Well, you
it's
said on
money
the
that
town
the
side, and you might be right, I'm not sure about, did you mean on the town side, or they have to find room in their budget to make that? That's what I would have thought.
Can I just clarify one thing?
Yeah.
Sure.
It'll never come below 70%. That's the statutory limit that the state has to pay.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So
All
our
right.
budget at 70, so it'll never be below your number, so your scenario can never happen. It
Okay,
has to come in at 70 because and that's what the state's required to pay out, and so therefore, the scenario that it comes in below 70 won't happen. And so if I'm budgeting at 70 and it can't come below that, the town can never have a liability. So there's no risk to the town. If I budget at 80 and it came in at 70, yes, then there's a risk. But I budget at 70 so that I know that's the bottom line. So your scenario can never happen
okay, so then there's no risk to
to the town.
the town or to the Board of Ed in this
Because I'm
case.
coming in at 70. And there's only upside.
There's
right?
only upside.
There's no downside.
That's great.
Mike,
I'll relinquish for now.
I actually just have one question. It's probably the same thing we're just talking about. So so the tuition decline of 467, that is special ed dollars, right? Okay. I believe the other questions I have were already covered. Nick, maybe you might have a couple questions, and then maybe Nancy's got one or two more.
I'm good. I think you guys should be commended for how you're managing the budget. I think that in this inflationary environment, to see the increases, it's very modest, and it's predicated on kind of how you guys been managing that tuition line item was huge, because this increase would have been 30% greater had we not done that. So
Thank you.
I think you guys are doing a nice job. Thank you.
I just have a couple more questions. I know that the former Gateway building that was occupied by ACES, I know ACES is in the process of acquiring it, and my expectation is that they will have to take out debt and then renovate that facility, and probably relocate some of the students who are there. Will that have any impact on our North Haven students? No, because they will go someplace else, wherever they go.
Maybe they would reach out to us.
I know that they've reopened Wintergreen in Hampton as an example. So, okay, and then I noticed the 311% increase in technology hardware. What does that refer to? I think it's line item 7340. It's the last page of your little summary at the beginning.
Is there a page number on that, Nancy?
Page 4?
7340, technology hardware, and then below that, technology software, supplies, networks.
Yeah, but what page on the budget presentation?
Page 4.
Oh, I see it. Yeah, 7340, yeah.
Sorry, I don't have the detail on that.
So I just wondered if this was
I'll get that one.
all new, iPads or something like that within the district, or,
No, it's not.
okay. All right, that would be
It might
helpful.
include Clear Touch's TVs, but I'm not 100% on that.
I'm thinking it's more network-related hardware. I believe it's more like servers and network services, I think, but I will get an answer for you.
Sure, that's fine.
The one that went from 4,500 to 18,500?
Exactly,
Okay.
that's precisely it. And then I notice in your budget, you have a line item that is just legal fees. How exactly, from a budgetary standpoint, do you distinguish between special ed legal fees and non-special ed legal fees?
So 100,000 of that is regular legal fees, and the balance is the special ed legal fees.
But it's all in one
There's
line
two
item?
accounts.
Oh, okay.
There's two accounts buried in there. This is just if you went back to.
It's just reported
if you
a
went back
line
to the
item.
detail section, you would see that legal fees, and you would see the two accounts.
So it's distinguished.
Correct.
Got it. And Mr. Hallahan mentioned the bus contract, and I certainly have been, unfortunately, near the high school and middle school around 2 o'clock, and I see the number of parents that are picking up their children. Do you have an idea of the percentage of students that actually ride the bus on a regular basis? Again, I'm not trying to cut any buses, but it would just be useful to have some sense from a contractual standpoint as to how many, at the elementary, middle school, and high school level.
So I don't have a percentage on that. However, we could never cut buses based on ridership, simply because that would increase the time students are on the bus. If you're putting two routes together,
Mm-hmm.
you're already getting home very late as it is. Our babies get home around 4:15, 4:20 some days. And if you're combining routes to one side of Green Acres District to the other, they're going to get home even later. So
Right, right. Yeah, it's more of a concern at the middle school and high school level, where I just see that there are so many cars lined up, on the other side of Bailey Road, and then,
Yeah, they snake all the way through.
lined up to go through the
So ridership
drive-through.
has increased since the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, using my eyes only, from pre-pandemic to now, it's very similar. But during the pandemic, you could see 2 or 3 students on the bus.
I see, got it. And then, this is something that we're seeing in every single department, is the increase in utility costs. So I'm assuming that you've reached out to UI or whatever the vendor is for the 14% increase in electric, and I think it's 25% in gas heat.
Yeah, so basically, it is UI. And we are under contract. The town has a contract that we report 50% of our electricity is purchased through Champion Energy at a set rate, and that rate is set, I think it's for the next 5 years, I believe. But again, it's through the town. I don't.
It's through the town, so
Yeah.
the school system doesn't
No.
have a rate that's separate?
No, so there must be like 100 accounts.
I'm sure.
There's 100 accounts, and we have certain accounts in there that are schools, and so basically at the end of the day, but because Mr. Swinkowski negotiated the contract and included the school system in that contract.
Yeah, let me explain that.
Okay,
Howard.
please.
Okay, so there's multiple fees when we look at a public utility company. What Howard's talking about is Ed and myself negotiated. We went on a world auction to negotiate a rate which is roughly 7.9 or 8.3 cents right now, which is much lower than the average rate that we see, about 19.9 cents. We included the Board of Ed in that rate, which was a strategic decision on our part, because if we didn't, they'd be paying the higher rate on a kilowatt basis.
So if that's the case, why is it going up
Because the other
14%?
50%, it's only on a portion.
I see. So
not on-
it's only
it's
negotiating a
on
portion of it,
Correct.
Yes.
and the
It's on
remaining,
usage and
Well, you got
then-
distribution, you got generation, that's always the problem.
And
Yeah.
we've also seen the buildings used a lot more now that we're coming out of COVID. They weren't used for the first 2 years, and now all of a sudden you're seeing the usage go up, not just through students and activities, but also people renting the building and things like that.
okay.
I think the UI rates this year are up like 40%, so.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
And the same with natural gas. Natural gas, because of the whole Ukrainian
Yeah.
war and the Russian war,
Right.
natural gas prices have skyrocketed as well.
That's
And so I'm
that's
trying-
the
and
excuse they're giving
I'm
anyway.
trying-
Yeah.
I'm trying to project, again, I may have been a little
Right.
conservative on that line, project higher, but I don't know what I don't know, so I
Right.
try to be conservative.
Sure. And again, I just have one last question, and you may need to follow up on this, but historically, grants that the Board of Ed received were very much appropriated. They could only be used for very specific things. And I think that ARPA represented a bit of a shift in that there was specific language that allowed the use of this federal funding for operational expenses. And perhaps this has now extended to other types of grants that you receive. So I would love to be able to hear, what was the total amount of money expended by North Haven on education last year? All forms of education. And then secondarily, what fraction of budgeted operational expenses were covered by outside grants?
Okay.
Meaning that 58 million that was budgeted for last year,
Yes.
is that whatever that number is, what fraction of that was actually covered by grants? I know you provided me with, all of us, with lots of detailed information in your report to the state, but again, of that 58,470,730,
Well, let me
how
ask
much-
you a question.
That's the-
Yeah, let me,
Besides
yeah.
the town- besides
That's the
revenue,
budget. How much of the expenditures that covered that budget, how much were actually, rather than paid for by the money from the town, they were instead paid for?
I'm assuming since there's no revenue in this budget, that those expenses are not in here because they were covered by a grant, correct?
Yeah, I guess I'm not understanding the question.
Right.
Perhaps I'm just being a little dense here.
So
Yeah.
grants can be used
Yeah.
to cover operational expenses. That frees up operational expenses to be used on other things or
No, I
does
understand the
not be
concept, but there's no
used.
revenue here on this, Nancy, so I guess that's the question,
ESSER
right?
2 and 3 were
Right.
specific, you had to specifically use ESSER 2, ESSER 3, even the prior ones before that, you had CRF and ESSER 1. Those had to be specifically related to COVID-related items. It wasn't something that, I couldn't go pay the electric bill.
You could use it for operational expenses.
Not according to the state, when we have.
Absolutely, and I can show you the language.
Here's what
on
I'm trying to
that.
say.
We did
If
not
we,
use
if we
it.
have a
We did
Well,
budget.
I mean, that's the language you used in several of your memos. Wherever we can, we're using outside grants to cover operational expenses.
All right, let me say something, and please tell me if I'm wrong, Howard.
Yeah.
We have a budget, and have had budgets in the past, right? So last year was 60 million, right?
Yep.
And
Well, 58, yeah.
we set a mill rate based on these dollars, okay? So I'm assuming if there were significant expenses that were in the 60 million covered by grants, right? They wouldn't be in there, right?
It'd be in the operational expense.
But if we got in, just to pick a number, $3 million of grants last year, right? And they covered expenses, right? Then they can't be in this budget, right? Right,
They
that's my
cover
point.
expenses in addition to the.
In addition to the 60, correct, yes, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Had operational costs
Yeah.
there, they'd be
Yes,
reflected
yeah,
in
that's
budget.
exactly my point. So I'm
Right.
trying to understand how much of the budgeted dollars were actually replaced with outside grants.
Well,
As a
it sounds
source
like
of
you want-
funding to cover your expenses as a,
So let me ask, are you trying to find out what was the total grants last year and maybe this year? Or are you trying to find out how much in grant money that paid operational expenses are now in this budget besides the 3 teachers, by the way?
no, it's not part of the budget. I'm asking
Just the total
the
number of grants.
last fiscal year, which is
Yeah.
the books are closed,
Isn't there a
right?
grant list in the back of this page? I thought
There
I
is
saw it.
absolutely a
Yeah.
grant list. So I'm trying to understand how much actually covered operational expenses. That's my specific question.
All right, I'm assuming you don't have that number right here, Howard?
And also, what was the total spending last year on everything?
So,
Not just the budget.
no, again, so, but if you're looking at what's being what's being expensed out of the ESSER funds, let's just take a look, because I provided that list to you, right? So if we're looking at the elementary school teachers, right, you could say theoretically, would we have had those elementary school teachers if I didn't have ESSER? Right, we have to ask that's the question you're asking, or no? Because that's an operational expense. So I can look to one item, right? One item that's very specific, Apex Sped program. So that's the RBTs that we are bringing in. That costs $800,000. That has been supplemented. That has supplemented and lowered the cost on the operational side because we're able to put it into the ESSER grant. That is something that directly lowered the ESSER grant. The ESSER grant actually lowered what the cost was. We can bring that over. We can take some of those expenses and put them over. And what we've done, as I've talked about for the last 3 years, is what we've done is we've slowly absorbed the full cost of that by bringing that program into the district and we have slowly absorbed that, but we use the ESSER funds to do that.
But those 3 people that were funded by the ESSER grant, those 3 people weren't in the budget.
Correct.
That's right.
Going to be now.
So that's a totally separate issue. I'm saying, of the budgeted expenditures, how much of it was actually covered by outside?
Zero.
Well, zero, it's gotta be zero, it has to be zero.
Zero.
It's got.
Has to be zero.
Because
There's no revenue.
If
there's no revenue, there has
you
to be
can't share
zero.
between- Again.
So when you use the expression, we are trying wherever possible to use outside grants to cover our operational expenses, what do you mean by that?
Actually, I say to supplement, that's what the word, to supplement the operating budget. It's a supplement to the operating budget. If you look in the.
Let's try and solve,
It's
let's try and,
It's not, yeah. it's
the
not-
grants are listed, the grants are listed in the back here, right? There's a long list of them. These are items that were covered outside the budget,
Correct.
right?
Outside
Except,
the 15 million.
right, ECS notwithstanding, because that goes into the general revenues, as you know.
Correct. That's formulating the
Those are
correct general
supporting the
fund.
district, they're not in place of.
Right.
Not place of it.
All right, we have another department, let's cover the CapEx.
CapEx?
Yeah, which is the last couple of pages in the members' packet here.
Again, CapEx, we are required, we would provide it, again, but we don't, none of these funds, these are not in the operating budget. And they're not included in the operating budget, and have never have been in there. So basically, any CapEx that we utilize is paid out of the excess funds that are put into what was Fund 423 Capital Projects Fund at the end of the year. I don't know if you have any questions regarding the CapEx. And then this year we added the additional, we prioritized them.
Yeah, that was helpful, I did look at that this morning.
Second page, and
Yeah,
so-
I saw that.
If we had to add in, let's just pick the high priority items, if we had to add in, that's $175,000.
Yeah, that's what I got.
That would add up to, that would change, if we included those in the operating budget, that would raise the rate to about 3.1%, give or take.
Right.
Are they all included in our capital budget?
No, because you don't fund them. It's just, this is more informational than anything, because they're non-funded
Not
items.
in your budget. no.
What's the,
Yeah, so-
what's the main reason for not including those high priority items?
It should be in the budget.
Yeah, historically, they've never been.
We're not advertising that.
I'm sorry, you're not what?
This is not, right, this is informational. We've never, the 3 years that I've been here, 3 budgets.
Yeah.
This has always been informational. We've never funded any of these. We've always had to fund these on our own. And that was always funded through that Fund 423, any excess funds that
Yeah.
came out of the operating budget at the end of the year.
Okay.
Was put into the Fund 423.
So is that your expectation here?
Again, if there's,
Unknown.
it's unknown. We don't know what to do, how to fill any excess funds. They're high priority, but again, they could be deferred if they happen.
Okay. So as you said, the dollars here, of which it's total 310.2, is not in the whatever it was, 2.8, I think roughly, right? You said it'd be 3.1 if we included these, is that what you said?
So if we just included the high priority, just the high priority, and that's
Right.
175,000.
Okay.
It would be true, round number.
Are some of these like safety related, such as like replacing a sidewalk or replacing ramps, flooring? Like, are we putting the town at risk if we don't fund some of these?
So they are related to safety. They're not urgent, or they wouldn't be in this plan. They would
Okay.
be taken care of
Right.
in some fashion.
Yep.
The longer we wait, the more
risk it
an
becomes.
issue they become.
Makes sense.
Any members have any questions on the capital expenditures?
So this is where you have the Clear Touch TVs.
Yep, 50,000.
On a surplus that they can buy.
All right, then I'll thank the Board of Ed.
Wait, just one, I just want to clear up.
Good.
Thank you very much for your weekly reporting. You both summarize the highlights and you report on budgetary variations weekly. And the communication's been really good. I've been very satisfied with that. I believe the other members, especially Mr. Leanna, if he were here, he'd compliment you too. He's not good. Every year, I usually get a little bit into the performance versus the funding issues that Ms. Barrett brought up. And a lot of this information has been sent to us by Board Member Amanda Gabrielle. So I want to thank her for all the attachments and everything, and all the time that she spent giving us information here. The answer, I think, that everyone knows is that the dollars do not directly correlate to performance. It has to do with curriculum and personnel and administration, which is we're very satisfied with. And those, of course, are paid with dollars. So we know that we are always slightly above our average in terms of various ratings within our district, and we are below average slightly below average in spending. Not much, though. We're pretty much good, and that means that we're pretty efficient, and smart about how the dollars are allocated. So overall, I'm very supportive of the budget this year, your presentation has been very clear. And so we understand the importance of this budget in the success of the mission that you laid out in the very beginning of the presentation. So I just want to thank you very much for what we've gone through today.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. All right, thank you, Howard. Thank you, Patrick. Let's take a 10-minute break till 10:45, and then Mike will have you, okay? All right, thank you. After a short break, Mike is going to take us through streets and roads. Mike, I know you've been in the audience for a while. You probably noticed we're easily confused, so let's make sure when we go through the numbers that what you're talking about is what we're looking at. So with that warning, please proceed.
Okay. Good morning. Mike Maturel, Director of Public Works Field Operations. As Tim said, some of the items that I will mention are different. But I'll start from some of the increases that I have are due to inflation as well as
All right, let's just start, Mike. So is it page 31?
On page 31, yes.
All right, and just the streets and roads we're doing right now, right?
Yeah, I'm going to do,
Okay.
yeah, we'll start
Okay.
with that.
All right, thank you.
With streets and roads, we do have contractual obligations to abide by, as well as inflationary cost increases. As we'll start at one thing, the gas, oil, and diesel, that has increased a little bit. Maintenance of equipment.
Hey, Mike, that's pretty modest. I mean, the Board of Ed was just here. They had it's probably a bigger budget, but 5% in this environment is pretty light.
Yeah, we went soft. I know the town is trying to keep a tight budget
Right.
this year, so we're hoping with these increases, it will provide us the amount of funds that we need.
Particularly since you spent 96 the previous year, that might need to go up a little bit.
Right. Maintenance of equipment, as you know, that does increase with the new equipment that we have previously were provided. Equipment rental, that has increased a bit due to some of the equipment that we do rent has increased, as well as this includes our subcontractors that we hired during our LEAF program. So there is an increase on their rates. Winter supplies.
Just 1 second, Mike. So
Yes.
does it include any new equipment that we rented?
We've actually increased some of our equipment, so it actually decreased the rental that we do. We do rent high lifts for our Christmas tree lighting.
Yeah.
So that actually increased a little bit, as well as the trucks that we hired during our LEAF program. So their rate actually increased a little bit.
So I guess the question is, do you have more of them?
Yeah, that's my question.
Of equipment that we're renting.
Are you
Yeah.
renting, more trucks in order to pick up the leaves now, and to
Or
account for
elsewhere,
this
yeah.
42% increase?
Right.
That will cover some of their rates that have actually increased. It's the same amount of trucks that we are using, but their rates have increased a little bit
I see.
due to inflation, the fuel cost.
So maybe the disconnect is this, because I think Nancy's hearing the same thing I am, which is rates went up a little bit here, and we're both seeing a $50,000 jump.
Yeah.
But maybe the way to look at this really is that you spent 152 in '22, and it's a much more modest jump from 152 to 170. So is it fair to say that the 120 was light or didn't work out? Is that the right take here?
I think the 120 was light. Some of the expense, I mean, there were unexpected expenses. We did have to rent a roadside mower at the time, so that may actually reflect a little bit of that.
Yeah, they're at 180 right now in the current year in the expense.
Are they, Mike?
In the expense book.
Yeah.
The expense report. So as of December,
Wow.
they're at 180. So they'll be well over 200 by the end of this year.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
And that figures low, 170.
Don't give him any encouragement, Mike. That's not our job, okay? That's,
Okay, the more he finds, the
Right.
better that will actually work.
I apologize.
Mike brings in the revenue, we keep the expenses down. That's the dynamic here. Go ahead, Mike.
Good catch. Line painting, of course, the paint has increased, and we are, that's a subcontractor that we bring in, state bid, to do the line striping of the roads, as well as parking lots, or any other necessary striping that we need.
Any new people in this budget, Mike?
For streets and roads, no.
Okay.
You'll see an increase, I believe it's in the sanitation and recycling. Actually, it's transfer recycling part. With sanitation, same thing, contractual obligations, gas and oil, we've seen a little increase on that. Our tipping fee, that we want to stay ahead of. I do think there will be an increase in our tipping fees, as well as,
I know Mike's on top of this.
For my
yeah,
knowledge,
Mike is,
Good,
Yes.
good, Nick.
for my knowledge, can you tell me what the tipping fees are?
Let me take that,
Yeah,
Mike.
I'm gonna
Okay,
direct that.
so Nick, tipping fees are the cost of our municipal waste disposal into a transfer station. All municipalities have tip fees. Tip fees have gone up in the last 4 years. The prevailing rate now is around 115. I believe we're at 110. At one point in time, we were $67 a ton. When I say 115 and 110, that's per ton. So that line item has gone up about $300,000 in the last couple of years, $350, because of the tip fees.
Thank you.
And Mike, our 110, do you know when that contract happens to expire?
So it really is a variable rate depending
Oh, okay.
upon price of diesel. Because the way it works is that we, like most municipalities, we transport to a transfer station, and the transfer station transports outside of Connecticut. So when you have high diesel costs, long hauls, that's why the rate's variable.
Okay.
so our
Mike, could I
next-
just back up
Oops,
just
sorry.
to the streets and roads? I know the chairman asked if there was any additional staffing, but there is a change of about 10.5% for the 2 Assistant Director of Public Works and Field Operations. Is there some big step function increase there, or that just seems like a pretty big leap from 178,464 to 197? This is in the.
It's on page
sorry,
43, Mike. It's the,
sorry.
it's the,
It's the employment table
yeah,
for streets and roads.
right. So you get the Assistant Director of Public Works / Field Operations, it says 2 individuals. And as Nancy said, it's going from 178 to 197
It's about a
rounding.
10.5% increase, 10.4%.
Well,
Right.
there's step level increases in the supervisor's union contract also. So that's probably.
So was that position increased the previous year? I'd have to go back and look, but I guess I don't understand this concept of a step increase when you have an increase the previous years, because some of the positions, there's no change for 3 years in a row, like the assessor's position. And then, of course, there's a big, 2.5% cumulative for 3 years. But when you have a big increase like this, it's not clear whether this is just a grade change or,
That page I cannot see.
Here.
So,
okay.
Does that have to do with federal contracts?
that may have been, we may have settled the contract.
Yeah, we're gonna get.
You
that
didn't see that
information
from previous
We're getting that
budgets,
information
so-
eventually from our finance.
We do have a tentative agreement with
Yeah, thanks,
Public
Mike.
Works right now. So these rate increases are, do include the contract
same.
from next year that's going to be
All
settled.
reflective of the
Reflective
contract
of,
change.
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Sometimes we don't put it until the contract is fully ratified. Okay.
Right.
Good. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, and it was, I looked it up, it was the same in the previous year. Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Okay. So the last one on our sanitation is the condo trash pickup reimbursement. We're increasing from 95 to 125, and that as well is for the tipping fees that they see as well.
We pay that once a year, right, Mike?
Right.
Roughly what month, do you know?
What's that?
Roughly what month do we pay that, do you know?
Is it at the end
I
of the
kind of
year?
felt like it was already in our budget. Maybe Mike's got it. Did we already pay that this year, Mike? Because I remember a bigger number. A bigger number than we budgeted, that's what I meant. My real question, Mike, is were you estimating, or was that based on what we've already paid?
It's been paid.
It's twice a year.
I don't know when it was paid, but it has been paid this year.
What did we pay?
$113,000.
Okay, so, yeah.
Let me explain the way that
Yeah.
works, okay? Every year, we do a calculation based on the vacancy rates in the condominiums. And if the vacancy rates increase, the condo reimbursement goes down. When the occupied rate increases, we have to pay a higher percentage because there's more people that we're taking trash off.
right.
Or
Yep.
more trash, that's the way it works.
So it's just a function of tipping fees and occupancy rates?
That's right.
All right.
I'm just confused about the word reimbursement on this. Why?
Yeah, they pay.
They don't pay.
And they send us.
Or they pay, sorry.
They pay. So in other words, we
Yeah.
don't send our trucks. So you take
Yeah.
St. John's Commons.
Right.
Well, you won't see a town truck going picking up trash. They have an outsourced company that does it, and then we reimburse them based on the calculations.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mike, keep going.
So our transfer station in recycling, this is where I am asking for a increase in staff. It doesn't show, it doesn't reflect the budget that we're looking at right now. But I am requesting a full-time employee to aid that division. This full-time staff will be an attendant for the transfer recycling center. We currently have 4 part-time employees there. The addition of this full-time assistant will assist with everyday tasks in maintaining the grounds, loading of containers, contacting vendors for the removal of full containers, and scheduling of the part-time attendants. The addition of this staff would increase the efficiency, the safety, and our day-to-day operations at our transfer recycling center. So this will provide us a cleaner, safer, and more inviting center that our residents can go into.
Can you talk about the cost a bit and talk about whether or not the part-time cost will stay 74,000, or does that number come down with the full-time hire?
Well, we'll eliminate one of our part-time staff and bring this full-time employee in there. It will increase a little bit.
So in our employment table, we have part-time going from 61,000, is on page 44, 61,152 up to 74,100.
Right,
And
and
there's no inclusion of a full-time employee.
no, it won't reflect
It's
this
not in
budget.
here.
It won't
Yeah.
reflect this
So you
budget.
think that we would add how much? Sorry. How much would we add?
The ballpark salary, do you know what the ballpark salary is?
I would say top number, another 30 to 50,000.
And since we got 4 part-timers, are we saying it's maybe a $15,000 reduction or in the part-timers, is that what we're saying?
Right. And some of the increase that we see is due to the minimum wage increase,
Yeah.
And the part-time is going from
5 to 4.
5 to 4, because these numbers
And
aren't
and it
listed
may
here either.
actually run a little less than that, all
Okay.
depending on.
5 to 4, and they're all part-time, and you think that that will also result, even though there's an hourly wage increase, you think that the 74 is probably on the higher side, or you think that's a real number?
74 may be a real number due to minimum wage increase.
Well, but let's assume it's real with the minimum wage increase, but I think the question is, we have 5 now, if we hired the one full-time.
Well, it'll probably lower to that number.
Right.
And
Yeah.
increase the top
Okay.
number.
Maybe you could
For
provide,
full-time.
maybe you could work with Ingrid and give us a little bit firmer numbers on
Right.
what this
Okay.
cost might be versus the savings.
Want me to help explain this too?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so what's happening here, folks and ladies and gentlemen, is that we have a lot of older people in the part-timers at these 2 facilities. And one we know is probably not going to come back. He's 93 years old. So, so what Mike is doing is, even though it's not in here, Mike is asking for this position to kind of put a more a regular presence in these transfer stations and recycle areas, so that it minimizes the risk of the people aging out in these jobs who aren't there. So we're going to have a choice here, okay? This is what this is about. We're going to have a choice whether to grant this position or to continue to try to do it through a part-time line. So Mike's going to get the number for Ingrid, what he thinks. I think it's 45,000. That's my sense on this, okay? And we
So
know,
our next budget
right.
booklet, are we going to, because it's a draft document, are we going to maybe see to change it? Because if it doesn't make it into here,
Yes,
it will never happen.
right.
Right.
So,
So it would be helpful to see both the numbers of head count and also the real dollar amounts.
so what we'll do, Ingrid, is we'll put the full-time line in, and we're going to just come up with a number, 45,000, okay? That's going to be what the job would be if this board passes it. And then we're going to back out, we'll talk to Mike. I happen to know, about this, but I'll let you work through Mike. Mike's going to tell you who we're going to back out and what that number represents on the part-time line, okay? And then what we'll see is the net incremental expense as a result.
Right. And again, both the transfer station and the recycling center are only open until either noon or 1 o'clock, and recycling is actually only Tuesday through Saturday. So how is it that this is a full-time position?
Mike?
Well, our transfer recycling is, we combined it, so it is Monday through Saturday.
Oh, it's now open on Mondays.
So
Okay.
our recycling center ran different hours than our transfer station. Now that we're running them together, it is from Monday through Friday, 8 to 12, and Saturday from 8 to 1:45. So we've seen a difference in operational wise being together, as in being a separate entity on two different parcels of land. We brought both of these centers together. So we've decreased some of our part-time staff, and due to health issues, we've seen some leave our center. So with this with this full-time position, we'll have a designated person there, as well as 1 or 2 additional part-timers on staggered schedules.
So the full-time position, even though it's a portion of a day, because it's 6 days a week, that's what's defining it as
Well,
full-time?
with this full-timer, we'll utilize them at the center, after hours. We'll end up cleaning up the area, loading up the containers, calling in the containers that are full, as well as we may actually utilize them in one of our different divisions, as in streets and roads, or parks.
Got it. Okay.
So we'll utilize this full-timer.
You'll find
in
things
different
for
divisions.
him or
Oh,
her
yeah.
to do. Got
Oh,
it.
there's plenty for us to get done.
Okay.
So-
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, no problem. Continuing down, is disposal of recycled materials. We've seen an increase for this throughout the years. We're trying to do something different there as well. You'll see later on in my presentation, we're trying to get larger containers for our residents to utilize at their homes instead of going to our recycling transfer station. Transportation hauling, you'll see a little decrease in there. I would imagine someone's seen the low number as 109 for last year, so that actually is a decrease there.
Is that due to just the cost of fuel coming down?
That may be just a decrease of how many containers are going out of the centers. They may have reduced a little bit.
So Nick, that number tends to be much higher if there's tornado and storm debris and hurricanes, and then it subsides when we don't have that type of cost associated with it.
That as well. So our maintenance division, the only increase there is, of course, the contractual agreements. and the garage equipment and supplies. Reason why I'm asking for that to increase to 50,000, as we get newer equipment, we need to update our diagnostic programs as well as our laptops to repair these pieces of equipment. Other than that, some of the lines stay the same. Our Parks Division, again, personnel is, actually, that's only part-time. Increases the electricity in the parks, of course, because of the rates going up from UI, we are increasing that. Park materials and supplies, as you know, inflation has increased the price of materials, that we continue on improving our parks, so the material cost is increasing. So I'm just I'm asking for a little bit there. The landscape and beautification, I'm asking for a small increase there. We continue on making improvements to our town center and our town green, so we'd like to have funds ready and available for those improvements. Actually,
Quick question about the track and field facility maintenance. It appears as though the contract is smaller, which I'd love to see, but it's just a little surprising.
It's shown at 89,581, Mike, for last
well,
year.
the track and field, that's a split effort between myself and Lynn.
Okay.
So that increase may have been, or actually stayed the same. As you know, we did renovate the track and field there. So the maintenance cost may drop a little bit or stay the same.
So what's in Lynn's budget for Public Works is the actual contract with the vendor, and then this is whatever your staff does?
No, this is the whole thing.
This is the whole thing?
The track and field is maintained by a subcontract.
Okay, so it is.
Yeah.
It's all one thing?
That's all one.
Okay,
yeah.
so, so we have an actual figure of 89,581, but we have a contract for 80. So I guess I'm trying to understand, if we have a contract, how did we spend more than that?
Is it possible, Mike, that this is partially a contract, but there could be some other costs that got into 2022 that we absorbed that were above and beyond the contract? Is that possible?
There may be.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, Lynn, as of last year, was reviewing the track and field maintenance of it. So I
Does
think
the
she
80
was
for the
more
contract sound
involved in
correct?
that. Huh?
Does the 80 for the contract sound correct?
Well, that was increased last year. So that 80,000, we may need to look at that and see if there
All right.
may be an
So, yeah,
increase.
Ingrid, could you ask Lynn, please, what the contract is for this, and get back to the members, please?
I don't know if it's a yearly bid that, for the maintenance
I
of
think
the
what's
field.
happened here, we'll have Ingrid check it out. We went out to bid, we got a lower rate, and I think that's what that shows, okay? But you can confirm it.
All right, any other operational expense question before Mike goes on to capital? All right, hearing none, Mike, proceed, please.
All right, on our capital, we're actually looking to replace two of our vehicles. They are both three-quarter ton, either pickup truck or a rack body. The first one is replacing a 2007 Chevy 2500. And the second one is a 2003 Ford F-250 4x4 with a rack body and lift gate. These two trucks, the first one, estimated cost would be, replacement cost would be $54,500. And the second one is replacement cost of $65,000.
Are these newer used?
They would be new.
So Mike, these are the pictures you passed out, right?
Those are the pictures, yeah.
So what, I'm sorry, what year is the orange one?
That one is a 2003.
And any recollection what year the white one is?
The white one's a 2007.
Thank you.
The white one we actually purchased used,
Mhm.
and now it's actually ready
Right,
to
okay.
get replaced.
Okay.
The other thing you'll see is the jetvac lease of $70,000. So the subtotal there is $189,500. I'm asking again this year for 95-gallon carts, 20,000 of them. So that'll be split 10,000 of MSW and 20,000 recycling. Of total is $1.3 million. So I have two options listed. One as a purchase outright, and one as a lease 6-year payment plan.
Mike, just to clarify, so 20,000 units, right?
20,000 units.
Half for what?
10,000 are MSW, which is trash.
Yep.
And 10,000 for the recycling.
All right, so, I know this came up last year, but, so on the recycling, are these the larger, taller ones that you would swing up into the unit with an arm?
Well, at this time, our trucks are equipped with tippers.
Yeah.
So they would have to bring them into the back of the truck, and the truck will utilize a tipping mechanism, and it'll empty out the carts.
Okay, and that, the same true for the material waste?
Same thing.
Okay. Which is more important, which is more cost-effective for, at this point?
Which was, I tend to do both.
Yeah.
This will actually improve the visual, and now you'll have a 95 gallon container to put your trash in recycling.
Yeah.
Driving through the roads yesterday during the windstorm, there were cans. There
Oh, that
were
happens all the time in my
recycling
neighborhood,
bins
yeah.
down the street.
Right, because they're not covered.
And now,
Yeah.
and now residents are guaranteed calling our office for replacements.
So are these trash and recycling containers for residents?
Yeah, for residents.
You've seen the bigger ones, Nick, they're about this tall, but then has the cover, the flap that goes over.
Yeah.
So,
These
he's
will
right.
only-
Yesterday, I had those plastic bottles all over my neighbor because they blow out of the top of the bins.
Right.
The cardboard goes flying, you know.
So all town residents will receive a trash pail from the town of North Haven?
It'll be
Yes.
a trash can, one for recycling, one for trash.
Okay.
And this will only go to the residents that the town actually picks up,
Understood.
provides the service.
As you know now, Nick, the town does provide the recycling bins, not the trash bins, so,
Yeah, and the recycling bins are tiny.
yeah.
Yep.
And there's usually 3 or 4 at one house.
Yeah.
Which this 95-gallon cart will eliminate that.
Yep. I'm one of those, so I appreciate the services.
So I did do two different options, the outright buy of $1.3 million or the lease of the carts at $247,531.50 per year.
So that's what you have at the bottom, so.
6 years?
6 years.
And then every 6 years, do the residents receive a new?
Well, they're pretty durable, so we're hoping they would last a lifetime.
Okay. So you'd only really lease them if you want to spread the cost over a longer period of time?
Well, yeah, they'll spread the cost. So it's not one big giant lump sum.
If you go back in time, Nick, there was a time where I think, at least in my experience, the town almost always paid out of cash, if you will, the yearly capital expenditures, not the bonded items, not like the schools and the roads. We've had some exceptions. The jet vac lease is one of them. We did every now and then, there's been a fire truck lease where, we have gone a little bit longer term, but historically, most of the stuff, as you know, sort of pays to go year to year. But then there's some of the bigger stuff we have leased it.
And,
My question is whether we, sorry,
yeah,
Mike.
no, go
My
ahead.
question is whether we should be leasing an item like this. I don't know that that's, in my mind, the right way to do this particular product, but that's another conversation.
And the other reason that Mike is bringing this up, and has brought it up in the last couple of years, that there is a workman's comp reduction when you have this type of an automated service.
But the question is, would we also have a reduction in the workforce if you actually have a machine doing what was normally the job of two people on the back of a
Well, there's one person in the back, right?
Well,
And they still got to bring it around, you said, right?
So sometimes it's two,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
On the back, and one person
yeah.
driving?
What we're doing is, if we do get these carts, then we're going to look at future plans on employees, and how we situate the decrease of employees, or actually transferring the employees to a different division, which will, we're always looking for more employees because our workload has increased throughout the town. So by transferring sanitation division employees to streets and roads or parks will benefit the town as well.
Thanks, Mike.
Mike,
Members?
can I just ask, what, were we able to acquire the truck that you had come before the Board of Finance before, and I think we appropriated contingency fees?
Yes.
Contingency money in
You're
order to purchase
talking
it?
the replacement body.
Right.
on the truck. Yes, we did. We just currently got it 3 weeks ago. We had it picked up and brought back to our facility, and it's perfect.
Okay, and
They've
how's
done a
it being used?
fantastic job. That truck is used for de-icing or hauling materials and supplies around throughout the town.
I see, okay, great, glad to hear it.
Oh, yeah, perfect job. Highly recommend that company for the next trucks that we purchase.
Mike, Nick, any final questions for Mike?
No, I think it's, again, very succinct and to the point, so thanks for the good job you folks do.
Thank you.
Nick? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike.
I appreciate everyone. Good.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.